Tales from Neo Astralia. Written and performed by Christian Esquivel. The first planet to discover. Wolves, a group of canine natives to the wilderness and hidden homelands around Eurasia and North America. They were meant to be carnivores, and under certain conditions, wolves had good hearing to capture the sound that were 6 miles away in the forest, and 10 miles on the open tundra. Those were the ancient times of how animals were made by the one who created and destroyed things that were alive, before everything in planet Earth was devoured, withered, and dead. A few years later, there was a change of history of the Terran society. Beginning on the first day in Yefa Heaven, the surviving Terrans were assigned to come up with a project to create a new life form where they could roam or run free in the calm and serene paradise in the planet Exaven. For it was the first planet that was filled with edible greens, sulfured water, snowy mountains, and unfamiliarly rare fruit, which the Terrans and animals were now able to eat them as snacks, instead of eating flesh from other species. The water, which used to be bitter at the end time before, had a crisp, air-savored flavor with a cool aroma that had a scent that came from a cold winter night. When the Terrans drank the water from the river, they were full. And after the water, they ate the greens instead of the fruit. Then they ate the sap from trees made of quartz. The sap had a citrusy yet distinct honey flavor that tasted like it was from a licorice plant. After the sap, they drank the water from a small cascade in the forest. That night, they went to sleep. On the second day that morning, it was raining, and the Terrans and the animals looked for a place to take shelter. As the rain stopped at noon, the greens in the forest began to grow taller. The quartz trees were singing with a radiant glow and a mellow humming sound. The quartz trees that sang in the rain were called the Nimya. Then the animals sang, though the Terrans didn't know how to sing. Even so, they were reluctantly amazed that the Terrans realized they made their discovery for the first time. The wolves howled, the foxes cried, even the deer called, but it didn't mean the Terrans did. It was the animals who discovered it. Their brain cells began to develop and expand. In the afternoon, the Terrans grabbed some garden vines and made some sautéed vines. While they were eating, the animals built their houses from dirt, water, grass, and hay from the meadow. The Terrans saw what they did. After the animals built their home, a pack of wolves headed for the mountains to discover and learn some interesting facts about the planet Exaven. As they entered a cavern, the wolves found that it was hot inside, but something shone and flickered inside the dark. There was a green, glimmering light with green sparks flickering from drops of green plasma-like liquid coming from the rocks that were melted. It was green lava. As before, they heard a synchronized humming sound coming from drops of green lava dripping on the pool. As the light flickered, It was playing a counter melody that echoed across the void in the dark caverns of the volcano. Ambient voices coming from the minerals that looked like diamonds. The humans, formerly before Terrans, used to think that diamonds were forever, but the wolves doubted the Terrans did know. The wolves howled once again, and the radiant light from the lava shone and sparkled like a hoard of gems that a dragon would guard in avarice. Then there came a ray of light, coming from the green lava. It hit and scalded on one of the wolves' forehead. It yelped, but the pain ceased. It gave the wolves a birthmark on its forehead. A summer sun symbol appeared on the eyes of the wolf. Then the wolf spoke like a human and asked itself, "What happened?" When the wolves heard what he said, they yelped and whimpered. They were afraid. Again, 2 rays of light hit and scalded their foreheads. Like what it did to one of them, they also spoke. They named the singing lava Yamarik. By the time the wolves left the cave, they felt confused, yet they laughed. They talked about what they did today with their animal friends. Then they saw opal-like minerals stuck outside the walls of the mountain. Then came a sound of chimes that represented Tibetan bells. One of the wolves sang an Australian hymn, and the minerals glistened and reflected like a mirror. Only it showed the wolves' auras inside of them. When one of the wolves spoke angrily, it changed the color of the aura from yellow to red. As they saw what changed the aura, it felt sad. Then the color of the aura changed from red to blue. At last, one of them smiled. The color of the aura changed from blue to green. When the reflection disappeared, it flashed and made their heads feel woozy. Then each of them could see the colors of their aura. At last, they learned and realized that the color of the aura represented the emotions of other animals and Terrans. Green represented peace and harmony. Blue represented sadness and humiliation. Red represented rage and vengeance. Yellow represented triumph and hope. Pink represented love and caring for each other. Orange represented laughter and happiness. Purple represented either fear or confusion. And those were the colors that represented the emotions of others, but one of them was not an emotion, for gray represented death and mourning. The wolves gave these magical minerals a new name. They called it Tialek. After the name was given to the minerals, their ears grew long, resembling these pair of ears of a cross between a jackal and a rabbit. The wolves now have the ability to hear things from 200 to 300 miles away in other open areas, while they could hear voices coming from caverns and other inside areas from 100 to 200 feet away. They learned how to turn regular minerals into bread. By turning these gems into bread, they scratched and ground the minerals with their claws. After the minerals were ground up, they performed telekinesis to picture the mind of the baked goods that were made traditionally by Terrans before they were stale and perished. The wolves dripped their venoms from their fangs. The ground minerals magically transformed into unleavened bread. There were no eggs, no dairy, and no yeast. They called their bread yaprit. When they ate it, it was soft, fluffy, and savory, just like a naan baked from a tandoori oven. Even the bread had a glossy, polished look. The effect of the venom turned regular minerals into bread, and the venom they used was from the green lava. The green lava could be dangerous to the Terrans because it could go through the skin to the flesh to the bones. It could be a very dangerous thing to other animals too. They could drink water too, but how? In the afternoon, the dark clouds came back and started raining on them. All of a sudden, they heard a bolt of lightning struck and crackled. The wolves yelped and hid under the rocks. Then they heard a soft, slow, arpeggio-like humming sound coming from the other side of the peak. There was a giant jade green stone that looked like a shield, although there were sparks coming out of it. The small spark zapped from their noses up to their foreheads. Their animal brains functioned like a human, and their ability to smell and taste became sharp like a dragon's tongue. Instead of smelling through their noses, they could smell through their tongues, just like what the snakes used to do before they were zapped. Instead of sniffing on them to greet, they stood up and shook paws. Their paws moved like fingers, and they used their hind legs to walk like a Terran. They named the jade green stone Sanben. Then the wolves' bodies grew 4 feet taller. Even the tail grew 2 feet long, whipping like a dragon's tail up and down. They learned to use their paws to pick up light objects, help each other up, climb down, and even crafted archery bows and arrows to shoot for fruit and eat them. That night, they made clothes from moss, leaves, and paw-crafted fiber to keep themselves from being bare naked. Fortunately for the females, they have fluff on their chests to keep themselves aware of being human-like. Not to mention they talked, walked, acted, and thought like a Terran, although their bodies weren't Terran-like after all. Just then, a female who was about 5 feet, just like the size of a female Terran, showed up and asked him, Why are you wearing clothes? We wolves don't normally wear clothes. If we want to act, speak, and think like a Terran, we have to wear clothes too, said one of the male wolves, putting on his clothes. Are you sure it's plant-based? It is, he told her. Can you teach me how to make some plant-based clothing? She asked. The male wolf nodded his head and began to teach her how to make clothes out of moss, leaves, and fiber. At 8 o'clock, after she made some plant-based clothing, the supermoon shone, and the mating ceremony was almost about to begin. The male wolves went looking for some fruit to give to their mates, while the females went looking for something to surprise the males with a delightful gift. The time has come. The mating ceremony began. The male wolves showed their gifts to the female of their kind, and the females did the same thing. They were both surprised, and they kissed, and were ready to move to their new homes. Before they went, the supermoon shone like gold, and the wolves howled at the moon, and with bliss and joy, at last the pupil of their eyes expanded and changed to a darker color with a reflection that resembled a nebula with a group of soft, glowing stars. Then they heard a voice said, My children, you have done well to become one of the animals who also did the same. Heed me carefully, my dearests. There is an omen among you, for the beast shall devour your breath and destroy everything that I have provided you with. Find a new planet where you, my dearests, shall call it home. From this day forth, I shall tell you a prophecy of those who will one day learn their errors and bid their doings for the benevolent instead of the wrongdoings. Spread your word across every planet, continent, and country that whoever seeks things that disrespects the Arch-Guardian shall receive its just reward, death. But whoever did wrong then wails and begs for forgiveness for the wrongdoings he or she has done shall receive its ultimate reward, to become a member of a family of Yefa Heaven. From this point on, I shall give you wolves a righteous name, and the name of the species shall be called a Canesian. Go now, and remember what I have prophesied. After that, they all went to their new homes and started their new life to become a family. On the third day after the mating season, they built the cradles and decorated their homes, hoping for their litters of pups to come. At 12 o'clock that noon, the female Canesian became pregnant. The name of the male Canesian was named Hob Justius, and the name of the female Canesian was named Lila Justius. They built a cement oven, learned how to produce power for light, and carved wood for furniture for the living room and dining room. They cooked and ate sautéed vegetables with solarberry vinegar. Solarberries had a sweet yet bitter flavor like juniper berries. The Terrans found a way how to use solarberry juice as fuel for scientific purposes. Solarberries, of course, required sunlight to help them grow in order to provide flavor, but it could only take a few days to grow because they can't grow fast as nighttime fell. If you ate one that wasn't ripe yet, you're gonna get poisoned for eating it raw, or it could give you a serious sort of mouth cancer, which is considered deadly, including your tongue. If fresh and ripe, then it is ready to eat. That night, Hobbs was awakened by a scratching sound on their door. Then he heard one of the windows broke open. He ran from his room to see who did this. Then he saw a huge Komodo dragon trying to climb up the window. Hobbs took out his bow and arrow and aimed for the creature that was about to climb in. He fired an arrow at the Komodo dragon and stabbed the beast into one of its eyes. The venomous reptile screeched and fled, never to come back again. Komodo dragons were meant specifically to be predators to either a Terran or an animal, living or dead. Even if a female is pregnant, it will jump on her, drag her with her babies, and eat her alive. In case if the predator tried to come back and get what it wants, Hobbs set up a trap to keep any predator away from their home. On the fourth day, while Lila was making oatmeal for breakfast, Hobbs was gathering some oranges from an orange tree to make some orange juice freshly squeezed. After using his telekinesis to slice the oranges and juice them inside a pitcher, Lila poured some orange juice into the cups. They made some unleavened bread made from ground wheatgrass for supper. That evening, Lila drank some water and ate some fresh purple carrots and unleavened bread for supper. Suddenly, they heard a snap from outside. The predator was caught in a net trap. Hobbs went out to see if he caught the beast that broke through the window. And there it was, the Komodo dragon that almost broke into their house. He sensed that the beast's aura was red, and so he tried to calm the predator down, but then it tried to snap back. There was something on its right eye, the arrowhead which the Komodo dragon mentioned a few moments ago. He apologized for what he did to the beast. Slowly, he used his telekinesis to pull out the arrowhead from one of its eyes. At first, the beast snarled, then it stopped and purred. Hobbs removed the net and set him free. The creature smiled pleasantly and jumped on him, giving him an affectionate lick. Then it got off of him. Just then, he saw that there was a collar with a scroll around his neck. When he pulled the scroll out from the collar, he read the letter written by the Arch-Guardian. Hobbs told Lila that there was a corrupted Terran who attacked one of the male Canesians, leaving the body with scars and bruises. The letter said that one of the male Canesians yelled and threatened a female Canesian who rejected him. Instead of walking away, he clawed her face, leaving her blind. It was then that one of the male Canesians was corrupted and decided to get his revenge on the one who won Lila's heart. He and his wife decided to move. The rest of the Terrans were living peacefully, but then realized they were a little concerned about one of the Terrans whose heart was corrupted. The Canesians had a name for a Terran with a corrupted heart, and they called it a Neo Terran. This was a warning sign that the Arch-Guardian had written to them. The safest planet to move was a planet with mountains, port towns, and lots of fields with flowers. Of course, the foxes didn't go with the wolves and do exactly what the wolves did. They stayed here in the rain and sang along with their fellow foxes and the Nimya trees. As soon as the foxes finished singing in the rain, a bolt of lightning struck and caused a shockwave, causing them to fly back and fall into the bushes. They fell unconscious. Fortunately, one night, they awoke and saw the supermoon shining a dim ray on them. The males had ivory tusks, but the females didn't. Instead, they had a small horn on their forehead, like a baby unicorn. They used their legs to get up, but soon they learned how to walk like a Terran. They now called themselves Ivorisians. After they received a letter from Yefa, they headed for the southern port island and called their new homes Ivoris, while the rest of the wolves who refused to go with them made their choice to follow the daylight road by eating solid berries. Then they became the Racinians, or, preferably, the Sun Wolves. Their furs glowed like a cross between bonfire and quinine. The Sun Wolves named their western island home Rasinia. As for the deer, they adored and sang along with the Nimya trees until midnight. The supermoon shone, and they turned themselves into a mysterious anthropomorphic race, the Exivinians. It was then that the Exivinians walled up the area in order to prevent the Neo-Terrans from crossing the border, where the forest was now the home of the Exivinians. However, 6 months later, Hobbs, Lila, and the other Canesians moved to planet Norsima, where they could find food like not only greens, but fish and eggs from a giant Grick, a chicken-like reptilian. Lila was ready to have her pups. The Ivorisian doctor came to help his wife get her pups to come out. There were 4 Canesian pups, yelping for milk. Hobbs brought in milk from a female Pegasus he captured and milked that morning. The pups' eyes were still closed, so Lila kept them out of the light. She had 3 males and 1 female. She named the 3 females Fernog, Abesil, and Vesakai. And for the female, who was the youngest, she was named Hesperides. The Canesians passed their test, and for passing their test, a reward was given to them. Everlasting life, up to 600 years until the end. Hobbs was 140 years old when they moved to planet Norsima with his wife Lila, who was 138 years old. The cubs were 6 months old. On the 27th of Astralis, equivalent to January, 3104 PR, post-revelation, The population of other Canesians began to increase, but then they spread news around planet Norsima, revealing that they were not alone. There were other new species that came from other planets who also moved away from an impending danger. There were Norsimians, short but benevolent, proud and strong. Even the females were easily short-tempered. Then came the Meladian felines, wise, predictive, and peaceful feline folks, who were taken in and raised by Norsimian fairies when they arrived as kittens, teaching them how to make medicine and use fairy magic to hide from an inevitable threat. After that, there came the Luxarians, mysterious, loyal, and magical unicorn, who were now friends and allies to the Exivinians. On the 31st of Astralis, the creatures in the planet Norsima were taught by Canesians about what they had learned from the supermoon in the planet Exivin. The name of the stone that was shown by the supermoon was called Yora. It was the supermoon that transformed them into magical, anthropomorphic alien races who found their purpose in their life, to be whoever they wanted to do, to achieve their dreams and fulfill their destinies. Each race made their own native language in the planet Norsima, and so did the Canesians, who were referred to as the wolf in the Ragnarok chapter from the Norse mythology, where the brave warriors died before they were given a second chance to prove their courage and strength in order to successfully enter the halls of Valhalla. The elves were also brought to planet Norsima by Yefa, the Archguardian. But what about the dwarves? They decided to stay and build their own dwarven civilization in a port town. The dwarves caught fish, milked the Pegasi, and cut off wheat from other islands where grains grew in the sunlight. They were not satisfied with vegetables, eggs, or even water, unless they would gather water to boil some crab or use it for gargling as a remedy for sore throats. The only creatures that decided to stay with the dwarves were the Mysidian terriers. They were loyal, helpful, and intelligent. The name of the oceanic planet was Mysidia. As for the Norsimians, they came from the planet Zelia, planet of ice and snow. For the Meladian felines, they also came from planet Mysidia, where the dwarves dwelled in this very planet, and for the Luxarians, they were from planet Hesavadus, a planet of an enchanting, serene paradise. On the 1st of Aldebaran, equivalent to February, a new day had begun, and the other creatures were ready to do their tasks, from apprenticeship to the Ultima. We hope you enjoyed this chapter from Tales of Neo Astralia. Come back next time